Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to introduce you to the work of ZRZ Studios, a company who at time of writing have 4 mobile games on the Google Play Store, and this game, Inops, is their first console release. Well, how does their first console title go? Is it destined to be the next indie darling? Or do the developers still have a long way to go? Welcome to MojoPlays, and this is our review of Inops. Better start a drinking game every time I say that name. Before we begin, we publish new content all week long, so be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos. Inops is a 2D puzzle platformer where you have to guide a small herd of ink splodges called Inops, take 2 drinks, that have to find and rally together other Inops, take another drink, who have been driven from their homes. And you gather them together onto a whole platter filled with even more Inops. This drinking game may have been a bad idea. For those of you who owned a PSP, I know what you're thinking. Yeah, the game does share similarities with Loco Roco, where you guide a large blob across the stage who can also split into smaller blobs. But that's about where the similarities end. For one, this game is far more moodier than that aforementioned title, as the game's art style depicts a very dark world bathed in bioluminescence or neon lighting depending on the stage. In fact, I would say the game's atmosphere is its strongest selling point, as, on top of the subdued terrain, you also get a very somber soundtrack that complements the world to the point of immersion. Now there is a catch to this dark art style, as sometimes smaller stage hazards like thorns, or in this case a bear trap, are hard to make out, which can result in some very annoying cheek deaths. The game's major draw, as mentioned before, is the ability to separate into smaller Inops, take a drink, or form together into one big blob. Ha! Didn't say it. You'll spend most of your time as the large blob, only separating when passing through tight spaces, clearing some switch puzzles, or whenever you're underwater. For the most part though, separating them is mostly situational, as some Inops move faster than others, which can be tricky to keep them together. And Inops can die if they go too far off screen, which can be annoying as some of the smaller ones can get stuck in a few of the game's many wind tunnels. The game also allows the player to interact with the world by using the Switch's touchscreen to solve its puzzles. The game recommends playing in handheld mode so that you can tap and drag specific mechanisms like bomb dispensers, switches, or gears, but honestly I found it more convenient just to play with a controller, as trying to hold the Switch in one hand and tap on the screen with the other proved to be rather uncomfortable to hold. Especially considering that there are some complex puzzles that require the use of complex maneuvers, where you need to use both hands while operating the dangerous machinery. Safety first, lads. The game is pretty difficult too. If you take damage, you won't get any invincibility frames, so if you're careless, you can lose your entire herd of Inops in one go. Take a drink. Things get into BS territory quickly though, as you'll constantly encounter traps that in most cases, you'll have no way of knowing they were there without memorizing the stage sequence. Further compounding the difficulty is the fact that Inops when separated can be difficult to control. Take a drink. They can slide a lot, or have their momentum thrown off by small bumps in the road. I'm not one to hate on a game for being difficult. After all, this time last year I gave Celeste an overwhelmingly glowing review. But unfortunately the game has a major hurdle that hindered my entire experience. Each world consists of 5 stages, and said stages each hold 10 Inops. Take a drink. Said worlds also have a 6th unlockable stage which leads to a boss fight. And to access those stages, you need to collect at least 45 Inops from the previous 5 stages. That means you need to collect 9 out of 10 Inops in every stage to get to the boss fight. This high quota puts a heavy damper on the game's pacing, as you need to clear the boss stages in order to unlock the game's 4th and final world. This wouldn't be so bad if those goddamn Inops weren't so goddamn fragile! Take a goddamn chug. Hitting even smaller hazards can easily lose you at least 2 to 3 Inops, and when your casualty allowance is essentially just 1, your only option is to restart the stage if you plan on, I don't know, progressing! The game does give the player optional extra lives in the form of collectible crystals if they lose all their Inops, but these spawn only 1 new Inop, so it makes the whole feature completely pointless. Because remember, you need to have at least 9 Inops per stage to access the final stage. There's also a speedrun mode where you race a single Inop against the clock, but it's purely for bragging rights and doesn't unlock anything within the main game. Inops is a game that had potential, but unfortunately it's let down by some annoying design choices. Its visual and audio display is incredibly serene, but the limited number of stages that asks for ridiculously high clear requirements, while being susceptible to losing Inops to cheap deaths, makes it hard to recommend. I wouldn't have minded the short length if it meant for an enjoyable experience, but forcing multiple replays to achieve near perfection per stage feels more like padding in the end. Check out these other great clips from MojoPlays, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos straight away.